It's happening in your neighborhood. There is probably someone in your neighborhood that's being sold for sex on the internet right now. This is forced prostitution. This is not something that this person has gotten into by choice. They may have been manipulated or coerced.
It looks a little different than it does internationally. It looks differently than a lot of people expect it to look.
And it's not just a big city issue. Here in America, it's all in the suburbs and the areas that we live as well as in the big cities.
Trafficking is right under our nose and we don't even know it. And it's because we're so caught up in our own life that we almost have blinders on.
So if you look at the history and look around at the history, it could also make you aware to look around at your present day and discover the extent to which we're involved with slavery, invested in slavery, and probably way too indifferent about slavery, etc., despite its pervasiveness and its persistence.
The most surprising thing that I found out about trafficking was I thought a prostitute was a prostitute, just being honest. I had no idea that 85 to 90% of all prostitutes are actually under a trafficker.
Traffickers, or pimps as they're commonly called, are glorified in our society. You know, they're players. These are the guys that everybody wants to be like, the womanizers, you know, the James Bonds of the world.
Like in the 70s when I grew up, you watch out for the white van and people handing out candy. You know, it sounds crazy, but that was like the traffickers. Now it's like, you know, almost anybody can be a trafficker.
The average victim that's forced into this lives only 7 years once they enter the life.
Pornography feeds into trafficking in a huge way, and oftentimes people don't realize that. And I think helping them to understand when you do this, there's a consequence for somebody.
The internet is the way to go, and it's anonymous. Everything you do on the internet is anonymous. Who you are selling, who's buying, it's just the anonymity of it all. I mean, that's why a John is called a John, right? Because it's just supposed to be John Doe. It makes it even more anonymous.
And it then reverberates back to the society, because as that whole scenario, the prostitution scenario or the strip club scenario, is spreading the message that sex is a product that you buy, that it's demeaning, that you can invade people.
Part of what was really hard to watch was to watch the Amishmen walk in the front doors of that place and realizing that demand has no barriers. It has no respect to culture.
But if I could save every girl I could out there, and especially hits home because I have my own daughter, I thank God that she didn't get into any of this.
I was trafficked in 1992, and I still read cases today of children who are being trafficked under very similar circumstances as my own 20 years ago. So if we continue to ignore the problem, kids are going to continue to be trafficked.
I was sitting down smoking a cigarette, and a guy approaches me, and he was 38 years old, and he asked me for a cigarette, and that's what got us talking.
They never used the word prostitution, but I understood that was what was going on. And it's important for people to realize that these people did not ask me how I felt, or if I wanted to go through with this, or if this is what I was thinking was going to happen. They just stuck me in a taxi cab and took me to Pacific Avenue in Atlantic City, and they sold me to an old man for $200.
And that's not who I wanted to become. And it's like it kept getting worse and worse and worse as the days go on. It doesn't get better, it gets worse.
It's important for people to be aware of this problem because I think there's a real possibility for the average citizen to intervene and to prevent.
When I learned about human trafficking, it wasn't so much as like a surprise as it was, this has got to stop. I just feel like this is something that I can really help change.
I don't think people know the ability that they have, the strength that they have, that's in them not only on a personal level, the courage that is in them, but the ability that we have as citizens to make a difference in our community, to protect the common good, to help women and children, to help men.
Call the police and say, hey, you know, I go to this nail salon and, you know, something doesn't seem right. You know, the individual's there, you know, I don't know what's going on, but maybe it's something you need to look into. We'll look into it.
The second they crossed into Pennsylvania, our state, using the North Star, was the second that the slaves knew they were in a place of safety and harbor and refuge. And so that is where it, you know, it just resonated with who we were, what Pennsylvania was all about, and what we wanted to do.
And if we can imagine that the work that was done to combat slavery back in the 16, 17, 1800s, if we can think about that work and that level of work, and it was hard work, but at the same time, the hard work still needs to happen for this horrific crime against humanity, human trafficking, or as some call it, modern-day slavery. There has to be a remnant of people who are willing to stand up, rise up, risk being called crazy for fighting this fight.